Just absolutely extraordinary. Going along to the Daily Maverick website and clicking on the story that Pieter Louis Myburgh has put up there about, I'm not going to call it an alleged bribe because it is a bribe, the 60,000 rand that was put on the table in front of him and sitting across the table from him at the time and handing over the 60,000 rand from a Dior, yeah, it's going to be Dior shopping bag, is it not, was the suspended CEO of the Independent Development Trust and her spokesperson. Pieter Louis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, John. Yeah, it's a little bit annoying to have to include the alleged, but there are legal considerations always in the reporting, and we have to stick to those.
Okay. We don't want to spend too much time on the background, and you are promising a story dropping next week, more about the property issues involving Tebogo Malaka. You first got involved with the IDT, covering the very suspicious tender for oxygen supply. That has now been cancelled, and it's the reason why Tebogo Malaka is on suspension. But you also received some information that she was spending a lot of money on property, and the amount of money she was spending wasn't consonant with her income. So you started looking into that, and you got particularly interested in a property that was being built on a plot that she had bought on the waterfall estate in Gauteng. And you were asking questions about that and noticing suspicious links between what was happening on that plot and a contractor to the IDT. Okay, that's the background. So take us to the point where you got the first phone call.
Yeah, so that would have been in about in early June this year. So I was making good progress with this investigation into the property and a IDT contractor, and the two issues seem to be quite related, and that is the focus of the investigation we'll publish next week. So clearly, somehow, in the course of doing this investigation, we obviously speak to a range of people. There are sources, there are implicated parties, etc. And by all indications, word of my investigation must have made it back to Malaka. I can only assume that's what happened because the IDT spokesperson, Pasha Makalane, contacted me out of the blue. I had no media queries with the IDT at the time. I hadn't spoken to him in a couple of months. It was just a completely, unsolicited approach from him, asking me to a meeting. And already in that very first interactions over WhatsApp, the language and the terminology already roused my suspicions. On WhatsApp, we were saying things that we were going to have a very private issue to discuss. And we could find, mutually beneficial issues, hopefully, to sort of, cement our relationship, that kind of thing. And also then very tellingly, he said that we'll have a first meeting, but then that would be in preparation for a second meeting where Malaka, the IDT CEO, would also be present, his boss.
And then he flies down for that first meeting, and you meet at the same restaurant where you met the two of them sometime after that. And at that first meeting, he said to you?
So at the first meeting, it just became even more clear that we're not by any means dealing with a normal journalist to spokesperson type of relationship or interaction. It was all about how my reporting up to that date was damaging the IDT, was damaging the CEO, Malaka, and that surely there could be some mutual interests that we could find. And I really interpreted all of this as code word for an inducement. In the context, certainly pointed to that. And then very tellingly, he indicated that everybody's making much of the 60,000 rand in the quantum, and it's ridiculously or ludicrously small for paying off a journalist, but the fact is actually that he was saying that I could bring contractors to the IDT who could plug into multi-million rand contracts, and I could make substantial amounts of money from that. And then he showed Pieter Louis that wasn't an idle promise, because a couple of days afterwards you got an invitation that would, had you been of low moral fibre, that you could have picked up and done exactly what they suggested you do, which would make a lot of money out of piggybacking on IDT tenders. He did, yeah. So 2 days after our first meeting down here in Cape Town, he did send me a IDT tender for a ongoing IDT tender to invite contractors to its contractor development program. And he said I should disseminate this among my contractor contacts, of whom I unfortunately have precious few, and that these contractors would then, somehow, I suppose, be in line to clinch contracts from the IDT. So there is a record of him sending me the IDT tender 2 days after our first meeting.
I'm sort of rushing things along because we don't have much time and there's a lot to get through. Also, what struck me about reading the story was the lengths that you went to in preparation for the second meeting at which the alleged bribe was offered. It's not something you just kind of, contact a mate with a camera and ask him to record. You really do, I don't know, create a safety net for what you're about to do.
Definitely. Look, so at that second meeting, shortly after that, we made the call as a news organization that, and in conjunction with good legal advice, that this is something for the public interest that we need to pursue. That it looks possible, we have good reason to suspect that if I do take this meeting with the CEO, then some sort of an inducement might be offered to me. And it's very important now we're treading on sort of very difficult terrain because, I can't go and induce or encourage them to present the bribe. I sort of had to go along with it. But I mean, all indications were that they were going to try and do this. That was just what the language suggested. Everything that Makhalani did up until that point suggested that this was going to be an effort to quash that investigation into the IDT CEO's house. So we put in place several practical arrangements. We appointed a firm of professionals who does this kind of work, COVID surveillance, etc. And we were just ensuring that we're in a position that if they actually went as far as bringing money to me, we would be in a position to document this eye-wateringly troubling development around one of our state-owned entities CEOs.
And then the second meeting happens, and it's the three of you for a bit. And then Tebogo Malaka asks the spokesperson, Pasha Makholane, to go away, and the two of you have a one-on-one in which it becomes clear that she... well, how would you characterize her? Oh my goodness, you're doing me so much trouble. My parents are so tired. They haven't been sleeping. How would you characterize the pitch she was putting in front of you?
Look, I mean, there's certainly an element of her playing to my human instincts. One can't help but have a little bit of sympathy. You are fundamentally going to disrupt somebody's life by doing this. So, she definitely played on that. And, but it's not the first time that it's happened. Ultimately, there's just a larger consideration here that they are involved in alleged nefarious corruption that greatly harm many other South Africans. So, yeah, she definitely went for the emotional angle. But, I decided to stick to the plan. And we had everything in place to record the inducement when it actually came my way.
And boy, did it come your way. 60,000 Rand in 200 Rand notes, which made a smaller brick of money than I thought it would. But it's presented, it's put on the table. And I'm thinking, is there anybody else in the restaurant? Are they looking at the three of you and going, this is weird, what's happening here? But the money is put on the table, you photograph it, say what's for my records, and then you say, I'm not going to take the money. I never had any intention of the money, and you get up and you walk away. And then the camera lingers on their faces, which are stunned, shocked, and then they get up and walk away in a great hurry. I mean, wow.
Well, wow is pretty much my lingering sentiment too. I'm still a little bit in shock. And yeah, I think, definitely from the moment that I photographed the money, I think it kind of dawned on them that something funny was happening. I think they were a little bit stunned and didn't really know what to do, but nevertheless finished taking the photo. And there was just an important little technical consideration. I knew that quite possibly the surveillance cameras, they don't always have the best quality of footage, and I was a little bit afraid that what we would have in the frame is an object on the table, but one that couldn't clearly be identified as money. So I just had to ensure that at that moment I snapped this and got conclusive evidence, irrefutable evidence that it is a bundle of money. And then as I left, they were certainly in shock as I left the table.
And then, because I read a lot of thrillers, I'm scratching my head going, how on earth do they come up with an even vaguely credible explanation for this that takes on what looks incredibly obvious, that this was an attempt to bribe you? I mean,
it'll be extremely, extremely difficult. So why we're saying this is unprecedented is that we simply can't, we've scratched our heads and we can't recall any instance where this sort of bribery, alleged bribery or corruption has been documented on video form in South Africa. So it'll be extremely difficult to wiggle themselves out of it. No doubt there will be some sort of a fight back effort. It's so difficult when it's not just documented evidence, but actual video evidence to really sort of paint a different narrative, and certainly not one that, absolves you of misconduct. I just can't see it. I don't know what's going to happen.
Have you asked them for comment? You didn't get it by the time of publication. Have you subsequently received anything from either or both?
No, there's been no further communication.
And what do you do next? Have you laid a charge of bribery?
That is also a very interesting consideration, and we are currently discussing that, taking on board legal advice as to what we should be doing.
Pieter Louis Myburgh, thank you very much indeed, investigative journalist with Daily Maverick. And next week there will be more on the story of her house, and I'm sure over the next days there will be more on the story of the alleged bribe.